Hello everybody, welcome back to Access Blockbusters and welcome to a quick non-spoiler reaction, immediate reaction to episode 3 of Dune Prophecy. These are my fresh thoughts right after I finish the episodes, and we're going to be going into them just very briefly into non-spoiler detail, and yeah, here we go. But before we do, if you haven't subscribed to the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel, we post podcasts every week, and we post clips from those podcasts every single day almost, and so make sure to subscribe. The spoiler discussion, the more in-depth discussion of Dune Prophecy Episode 3 will be coming out later on in this week, as well as more in-depth coverage of the first 2 episodes of Skeleton Crew and Creature Commandos. Get excited for a new Star Wars show and the beginnings of the DCU. It's going to be a very fun time. So subscribe to the channel for more in-depth thoughts on those 3 shows, including Dune Prophecy. But for now, let's get into the immediate reaction. So I liked the first 2 episodes of Dune Prophecy. Just to give a little bit of a preface, I thought that after watching the first 2 episodes, this show is not for everybody because it's very heavy into the Dune lore. It's a little bit complex, even for me as somebody who is a big fan of Dune Part 1, Dune Part 2, and the first 2 Dune books as well. But it is a lot to kind of take in, right? Because there are just different characters moving around, there are different plots, and it's slowly building, is what the first 2 episodes are doing. There's a lot of intrigue with Desmond Hart, especially at the end of episode 2, and with episode 1 being kind of that slow setup, it leaves a lot to be desired in terms of a payoff, but I think that that's very intentional on the show's part. However, we are heading towards the halfway point. In fact, I believe we are now officially halfway through with the series. It's not an 8-episode show. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, I believe this is a 6-episode show, so we are starting to get into the territory now of, okay, where are these payoffs coming from? We get a little bit of a hint in this episode, maybe. But honestly, this episode, I feel like, kind of halts the momentum. Now, the episode, I'm not going to go into details about what this episode is and what this episode isn't, but this episode, just in general, I feel, just by the way that it was structured and by the kind of story, the kinds of storylines that it was concerned about, made the progress that we were building towards for the first 2 episodes kind of screech to a halt. Now, I will say, I was a little bit more frustrated through the first 3/4 perhaps of this episode than I was the last 4th. I think the last quarter of this episode brought a lot of those storylines together in a way that I understood characters much better than I did before, and I think that that's really good going forward. However, it makes me think that this episode could have been either condensed or it could have been stretched out even, or if they had more time for this show, if they had a couple more episodes to spare, that these things could have been fleshed out in more detail. But I think that what they gave us in this episode in a vacuum is interesting. I think some of the revelations and some of the subplots and the different character machinations and what different people are doing and how we learn about different characters in this show is interesting in itself. But I think that this episode felt a little disjointed, a little bit rushed, I would say, and then brought us to a point where I went, oh, so we're going to stick with this storyline instead of a couple other ones. And perhaps that's wrong. Maybe in episode 4 we pick up with some of the other storylines that I find a little bit more exciting. But the end of episode 3 made me go, oh, okay, so this is a thing that we're going to be focusing on more as the season goes on, when I thought that we were kind of done with it at the end of this episode. But perhaps they're going to go in some interesting way. I don't dislike anything in a vacuum in this show. I just think that the way that episode 3 was constructed felt a little halting, a little slow, a little disjointed, and perhaps not as focused as other episodes, because I think they were trying to get through a lot of material, and I think just some of it came off as a little bit disjointed. But I think, again, like I said, the ending brought a lot of it together in a way that I was like, okay, I can kind of see where we were going from there. So what do you guys think of episode 3 of Dune Prophecy? Again, spoiler discussion is going to be coming out later on in the week, so look forward to that. But let me know in the comments down below what you thought about Dune Prophecy episode 3. That'll do it for me for this quick little video, and I will see you guys in the next one.